Hello, Tomahawk YouTube here with my review of the Corsair Air 540, and to answer the question, is this case still relevant 2 years after its release date? Let's start out with what makes this case really unique. It's a two-chamber design with all your main components on the left side, and on the right side has your power supply, SSDs, and a 5¼ inch base, along with your front I/O. This allows the dual chamber cooling, as Corsair calls it, where you have nothing interfering with the air that is supposed to cool your components. In a normal computer case, you have hard drives between your front fans and your components. In this case, the air can go right over the components, which is supposed to lead to better cooling. Now we move into the main chamber of the Corsair Air 540, where we can see that we have two hot swappable hard drive mounts, and they are in really flimsy hard drive sliding bays. And I've actually already broken a tab on this particular one. It's very easy to install using these, just basically what are straight pegs, and they just go into the side of the hard drive in little screw mounts. You just flex the bay and put it on there. Oops. See? Just another part of the drive broke right on camera. They're very flimsy, but they are rather easy to install. And installing them is pretty safe. You just slide them on there onto your SATA and power cables. But then when you want to pull them back out, you have to really bend these really flimsy plastic clips, which is why my other one broke on this drive. Now we can also see that we have plenty of room for nice long hard drives and nice big motherboards. I have an ATX motherboard in here with a graphics card that is 12.1 inches. That is one of the biggest graphics cards you're going to find on the market, but we can see we would have room for an eATX motherboard because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 PCI slots in the back. But it also has compatibility for XL ATX motherboards, meaning it will cover up these very nice rubber grommets over here. But I wouldn't really call that true compatibility because there's very little room then to manage your cables, and you find some interference in the back with the DVD drive mounting system, which we will see later. And we can also fit very large CPU coolers in here, like this Intermax Black Twister fits without any problem. The case also includes 3 140mm fans, which is expected at this kind of price. And these are the Corsair AF 140 fans, but they're not the same ones that they sell online with the fan rings. They're a little faster than the Quiet Edition ones, but they're quite a bit slower than the high performance ones. But they also use, their main drawback is they use a sleeve bearing on their motor instead of a fluid bearing. Might be a ball bearing, not quite sure, but I know the other fans use either a fluid or a ball, and these ones use a sleeve, which is completely inferior to the other two types. It's loud, you can't mount it horizontally because it will fail very quickly that way, and it's overall just, the only reason you would do it is to cut costs, which is very disappointing at this quite high price of the case, which is usually $125 to $150. Especially given that the whole outside is plastic, but at least the whole side is metal, and the case comes apart quite easily with thumb screws on the top and the side panels. Now that we're done with this side of the case, let's go ahead and move on to the back side of the case. Before I take the side panel off, I'd go ahead and show you what this other side looks like. We can just see that we have a grill right here for the power supply, and other than that, it's just matches the rest of the finish. However, this is a metal side piece, which is good, but that means it doesn't quite match the rest of the plastic pieces, which is a little disappointing. So it would have been nice if they would have made the rest of the case metal. Let's go ahead and take it off with these very nice thumb screws. They do not stay on the side panel like a lot of the newer cases, but they're very nice, quite easy to take off without any tools. Now we take that off. Now we can see the back side of the case, and I've done very little cable management back here, but as you saw in the front, it looks very clean. We have the ability to mount 5 SSDs over here, our power supply, and 2 5¼ inch drive devices. I am very fond of this toolless mounting bay, and I would show you that right now, other than I have some cables in the way of my disk drive, which are zip tied in, the only reason being that they tend to fall out of my SATA connector in my DVD drive. So we can see that we have plenty of room for very long power supplies. If you want to do water cooling, despite this being an Air series case, you could mount your pump and reservoir up here, down here. You have plenty of room for it. And there's really no excuse in this case for not having good cable management, as there's so much room back here. And I have found that with this toolless mounting system, go ahead and pull my SSD out, don't worry. It's safe. I have found, here's a little mounting tray, that the SSD is rather loose in it, as it's meant for like a little thicker SSD than my Crucial M500 drive here, which is a pretty standard thickness. So it's a little disappointing because the drive kind of rattles around in there. So you would not want mechanical 2.5-inch drives on the system. All you do to install it, you just slide it in. You just pull this tab back, slide it in. However, it is a very flimsy tab, kind of like the hard drive mountings in the front. And you just pop it in. I have found that some people have criticized this case for not having hard drive mounts, 3.5-inch mounts in the back of the case. But I'm not too bothered by that, as not very many people use more than the 2 hard drive bays in the front. We'll go ahead and bring around to the front so we can talk about the front of the case. Here we have the front of the case where we can see that the whole front and top is mesh. We'll talk more about the top in a second. The front is a nice mesh grille. And I've seen quite a few people paint this because to take it off, there's 2 thumb screws that are all the way on this back mesh. They're just on the back. They're very easy to take off, just like the side panels. Go ahead and do that right on camera so you can see how fast it is. Pull that, slide it out. We have access to the top. Talk more about that in a second. Toss that over there. And all you do is you just slide that up and out. And you have access to this dust filter, which as you can see has collected some dust, so that is good to see. And we can see more of these fans. These are, like I said earlier, white LED 140mm fans, but we can also mount 3 120mm fans and compatibility for 360mm radiator and a 240 or 280mm radiator in the front. Go ahead and clean that up while I'm at it, and all you do to get it back in is just kind of slap it back on there. Don't worry, I'll get to cleaning that later. You just slide that in, and I'll go ahead and put the top piece on when I'm done talking about that. And we have our 2 5.25-inch bays, which I really like how the plastic matches so well with the rest of the case, but we can see that an all black DVD drive does not match this finish quite because, you know, they're different finishes, but that's not to be expected as most cases do not. You see that we have a reset, hard drive activity light, power button, which has a very short travel but feels very nice. We have microphone out, we have headphone out, and 2 USB 3s. I would have loved to see more front I/O, maybe like a SD card reader, although those aren't, most people don't need to do that, but maybe I would have liked to see at least 4 USB ports, whether they're USB 2 or USB 3. And even if, you know, they would have supplied any kind of extra functionality to take advantage of the front of the case, but I can see what they're going for with the nice clean design. One thing I did not show you earlier on this is quite a few people like to paint the mesh on this a different color, which I will be doing in a future video. So you can see to pull it off, all I have to do is undo these screws on the back. It comes out very nice and easy. And so you can just take that mesh off, not have to worry about taping anything off. Go ahead and move on to that. Let's go ahead and move on to the top. Here we are at the top of the case, where we can see that we have mounts for 2 140mm fans or 2 120mm fans. And while I take this top off, I'll tell you about radiator compatibility. We can see we can fit either a 280mm or a 240mm radiator, but you cannot fit both a 360mm and a 280 at the same time. So if you want a 360 in the front, you can only fit a 240 in the top. And the top radiator can be quite thick as it's set away from the motherboard. And this front radiator, did not mention this earlier, can be about 30 to 45mm thick depending on how long your graphics card is. You can see that there's not too much to this. It's just a nice mounting location for your drives. It's a little disappointing to see that they didn't include fans, but they would have to include higher quality fans if they want to include them horizontally. That's one thing I keep on harping on because it's one of my biggest disappointments with this case is the fact that it doesn't have fans and also the plastic finish. But this is not in their obsidian line of case, so it's not expected to have that same aesthetic appeal. It's more for the more gamery crowd and who want something a little bit different. And I guess that brings me on to the conclusion of the case, where we will go ahead and put it back on the desk and talk about that. With that said, let's go on to the conclusion of this case. Pros: you have a nice beautiful side panel window, only showcasing the components you want. More cable management room than you could ever want in a case. We have some cons: that it has really cheap fans for such an expensive case. A lot of the Fractal offerings and NZXT and Fantech offerings have much better fans in them. I haven't had personal experience with the NZXT fans, but I've heard quite good things about them. We also sacrifice a little bit of build quality, like I said, the plastic side panels. Not the side panels, like the top and the front. These ones are metal, but that does mean they don't match in finish. Our hard drive bays are the hot swappable ones, have very flimsy designs. Same with the SSD things in the back. And it also is very wide. However, it does make up for that by being quite a bit shorter for a case that supports XL ATX motherboards with not full compatibility. You're going to want to make sure that it actually fits in there with someone who owns this case, because there are quite a few owners of this case and you should be able to find someone wanting to use the same board you have. And then we ask the question, who is this case made for? It's made for the person who wants the best performance, who wants this unique design. That's the main thing. If you will have to like this unique design, otherwise this case doesn't make sense. You want this unique design, you want performance, and you're going to take that at the cost of noise and some build quality. It's not going to fall apart by any means, but having that mismatching color tone could bother quite a few people, including myself. You have some cheaper fans to begin with, and they're quite a bit louder than some of the other offerings, but there is so much room for water cooling and air cooling that it does make up for it in those fields. In fact, I'm really bothered by noise, and I love this case. I love the cube design so much that I'm going to mod it a little bit so I can hopefully make it a little quieter. New fans, and then where the real modding comes in is like some dampening faux. Not too much stuff. I will be posting a video on that. I'll be painting it, because for being a kind of consumer case without being full-blown enthusiast case level, it's mostly all screwable instead of having rivets. There are some rivets in the back that you can't take out, but you can take it almost all the way apart down to the bare bones and paint it. And then we ask the question, does this case really make sense in the market? Anymore, its only saving grace is it's being unique in a cube design. The Fractal Design R5 and the Fractal Design S, which is just a Fractal Design R5 with a few less drive bays. A lot of the Fantech offerings, like the Fantech Enthoo line and the NZXT H440 and the 450, makes this case kind of irrelevant from a price to performance standpoint. Those cases are $50 cheaper or more, and they do most of the same things, and they even include better fans, better build quality, more options when it comes to mounting drives, and have the same kind of hardware support that this case does. But the only thing they have that this case has that those cases don't is this dual chamber design. So in conclusion, if you are in love with this dual chamber design, I think you will be able to overcome kind of those obstacles that you get buying an older case that doesn't have all the newest features. But if you're someone who not quite sure on the dual chamber design, you're probably going to want to go with a different case, as this doesn't really stack up compared to the competition, especially being much more money. Tuning into my video. Please like or dislike and explain in the comments section why you did so. I'm open for video suggestions and constructive criticism. Subscribe if you would like to see more tech-related content from me. Thank you.